This is Five Places, Los Angeles, a podcast by the E04 for Architecture and Urban Design. I'm Emmanuelle Bourrier, and I'm excited to share my interview with Natasha Case, whom you may know as the founder and CEO of Cool House Ice Cream. Famously, Natasha and her partner, Freya Estreller, launched Cool House in 2009 from a barely drivable postal van at the Coachella Music Festival, where the brand went viral. Natasha led the company as CEO until its acquisition in 2021 by the Urgent Company, a family of brands working towards a more sustainable food system. Natasha is currently president of brand experience at the Urgent Company, founder and general manager at the Lunch Bunch, and it's an understatement to say that she has been featured in many national publications and media outlets. Natasha's full bio is in the show notes, along with links to the 5 places that define Los Angeles for her. A quick note, this interview was recorded in April of 2021, when the city was still grappling with the COVID pandemic and many things we took for granted about urban life were called into question. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this. I'm really excited to learn about the 5 places that define LA for you.
Oh, yeah.
So my first question is, how long have you lived in LA?
My whole life. Born in Cedars-Sinai, as were both my children. And I've actually only not lived in LA. In college, I went to Berkeley, including 1 year abroad in Rome. And then, I came back here for grad school. So other than kind of, some long stints in New York and other cities getting the business going, I've been here all the time besides that. And I'm third generation on my dad's side. My grandfather went to Fairfax High. My dad, born and raised here, and then us. Yeah.
Wow. So you're really, now what do you think of the term Angelino?
I'm happy to
be an
accept
Angelino.
That term. Yeah.
Because you're a real born and bred third generation.
Right. I think, right. It's kind of like blue blood by LA standards, but it definitely, as we know, LA is a city where people might say they're an Angelino after just a few years. So it's cool to, have been here, 37 plus my forefathers.
Amazing. I love it. So let's dive into your 5 places, the 5 places that really define the city for you.
First. Okay. Well, I wanted to start with one pretty close to where my Culver City headquarters is. And this is, not necessarily something that you can get today, given all the circumstances coming out of COVID, but there's a place down on Adams. It was West Adams Birria. It's basically this birria stand right in front of a laundromat. So you have this like very just, like a laundromat that is kind of like massive. It takes up like a lot of the block, and it is very bold right there. You can't miss it. And then in front you have this birria stand, and it's so incredibly delicious and flavorful. The way that it's kind of made in this like long process of, it's really almost like a stew. And then you take this like incredibly tender, meat and you can kind of fry, the way that they do is they fry it up, put this like fried cheese kind of like almost like shell around it. And then in another, tortilla and all the fixings. I think that one was called like the spider or something. And then a couple other very small menu, different options. And I just think it's so LA to have this intersection of this massive kind of, no shame laundromat, incredibly delicious, like a traditional Mexican dish that's so flavorful that someone really spent time preparing. I don't know everything about birria, but I do believe it's a pretty long process to get it to that point. It's a very special item. You dip it in, they basically extract the stew that they cooked it in, which is, as you can imagine, unbelievably flavorful. And we went a couple years ago for my birthday, we did like a taco crawl, and that was really the main stop. And we brought kind of, little like road dog margaritas that I had made because we were at the time living really close by. And not only were they not concerned or caring, they actually like gave us ice to put in them and made sure the margaritas were the right. And I still had like a nice suit from being in the office that day. And anyway, to me, it's also LA, that experience, like in the street, the kind of the just being like cool about, I was celebrating this birthday. We were with like 6 or 7 friends, got the suit on. It was my birthday's in August, so like warm, beautiful day, and that just moment just really sums up something I totally love about LA. And it's also the kind of thing you're not just necessarily going to, show up in a city like here and be like, oh look, there it is. It's like you kind of, I hadn't discovered that until the year before. I've like we said, I've been here for a very long time. And LA is like all these little gems that present themselves after you've really spent time here, and you kind of share these little nuggets. And I don't want to say secrets, obviously. And, I don't want to be obviously the, this white lady who thinks she discovered it. That's, not by any means what I'm saying, but at the same time, it's like, I feel like LA is always about unearthing these like cool new experiences that you just had no idea were there, that you could easily just pass by. So that's my first one.
That's beautiful. I love it. It is so LA. I mean, the fact that it's right next to this laundromat and it's unassuming and the food is incredible. And that you, having lived in LA your entire life, only discovered it just about a year ago. I mean, LA it is just full of, I guess, treasures is a good word for it. Treasures like that.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. It's really, I feel like there's an endless amount, and it's a city that's kind of, it feels very unstagnant here. Like I feel like cities like kind of more traditional modern cities feel more defined. So by definition, there's always new like gems to unearth, and it's what makes it really fun to be here for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And because we're recording this, as we're sort of emerging from this pandemic, do you know how that birria stand has done during the pandemic? Have they weathered it pretty well? Or?
Yeah, when I have tried to go by there, with my cravings in this last year of COVID, I have not seen them there. And I think that there were a lot of rules about street food, but I think we could see. I just started really coming back to my office, so it's not far. If it's back, I don't know that it is right now, or maybe they found a spot that feels better suited to, kind of the change in conditions coming out of COVID.
Yeah. So. Yeah. I hope they're okay.
I know, me too. I really do, because they're the kindest, friendliest folks that make delicious food, and they definitely deserve to continue running their business.
All right. Yes. What is your second?
Okay, second one. My second one is the Bluffs Park in Malibu, kind of near like where the Country Mart is. If you all the way down PCH, it's really interesting because it's basically like this baseball, softball diamond on the beach side of the street. And I was in a softball league, before COVID. That was so much fun. Games, I think they were on Sundays, like kind of like late morning, and early enough where you didn't really encounter much traffic getting out there. So like beautiful drive, and you go to this, like baseball diamond in this like just epic view of the ocean. And, in really that heart of Malibu, where you kind of have to think to yourself, like, how does this even remain this baseball stadium so that we can have our softball league in kind of one of the most, sought after views in the world? This should have gone to a developer to make another Country Mart, or yet somehow, I don't know, the whole backstory, but it's maintained this like rec sports field center, kind of set up with like a couple other, like kind of very, very stripped down kind of park space around it. And so, look, I'm grateful that it is. And we had a lot of fun. That league brought me so much joy. It was incredible to be part of. I did just learn that we're coming back in July, which is super exciting.
Great.
Yeah. And I just think that's also an LA thing, like just being there and really experiencing the beach and the view that often. is something so special to hear, but that almost like by mistake, there's still this baseball field, is really, really cool. And then also I would always go and get lobster rolls, with Freya and Remy after the games at Broad Street in the Country Mart. So that was a real treat to look forward to. Actually, update. So it's now, I don't know if they changed the name, but LA Birria on West Adams Boulevard. It does appear that they are back.
Oh, great.
So yes, very, very good news, and definitely going to go support very soon.
Excellent.
Yes, that's a very important one. So so the Bluffs Park, it's just, I think, very special and very, very beautiful.
I actually
and
know that park.
Defines LA. Yeah.
We used to take Nicholas there when he was little, because there's a kids playground there, and you're just in this magical spot overlooking the ocean, and there's a kids playground. So it's really lovely.
Yeah, we're very lucky. The way that LA is scenic is so iconic that we almost can just we just show up and it's just there, and you can almost forget about it, oh yeah, like prime real estate here, so that's definitely one for me. Back to food, I definitely have to put Musso and Frank's on my top 5 list.
Okay.
They are just reopening, I think May 6th. We're going like a week later to support. I just think, they've been around since 1919. So it's like they've made it this, 100 years, and through then 2020, it's like, what an interesting marker. You've been around 100 years, which is like, you're running basically the most difficult kind of business to run in the world. And then, COVID comes along as if to say, can you really, keep going? And I'm so glad that they have. And to me, it's like, I just find it one of the most iconic restaurants in LA, just that sunken bar, the kind of career waiters, the style of old school food, the blue cheese olive martinis. I mean, the booths, I just live for like a martini in a booth. Like that's really, my main criteria for going to restaurants. And so I would definitely put that up there. And I've just had so many different, so many great memories there, like different business centers and friends, or kind of ending up there or meeting people there, or there's just, it's just always felt like this kind of really interesting place to congregate if you can get a table.
Right. Right. I love how LA is such a bright, open place, and you think about the ocean and the sunshine and everything, but also that kind of dark atmosphere, and the martini in the booth is also so LA.
It's so true. And it's interesting. I had seen earlier in COVID, they had, a setup kind of in their valet parking lot. And then they clearly decided not to do that again once there was like that phase 2 of being able to reopen more recently. And part of me is just like, I'm sure there's so many factors in a business decision like that, but part of me is like, it's so hard to compete with that atmosphere, like you're saying, that dark, the textures, the kind of the din of all the conversations. And people, I feel like, kind of looking around like, hey, that person's familiar, that person's like, you can't really replicate that, in a parking lot. And part of me is like that they were probably just like, let's just wait and do it right.
Yeah. Yeah. That atmosphere is a big part of it.
Huge. Yeah.
And a martini kind of tastes better in a dark bar.
Why is that true? It's actually a scientific fact.
We could do a study, like that's a hypothesis, and then you have to prove it out by doing a bunch of experiments.
Right. Let's do this study. Let's start this. We are volunteering ourselves. We're not going to be in the control group. So that's definitely on my list. Okay. Back to the sports. I feel like it makes me feel very gay to have not one, but 2, softball, baseball picks in my top 5, but I had to put Dodger Stadium on there. And to me, it's just, you go to other cities. For example, I was in like Pittsburgh judging an ice cream competition. I actually love Pittsburgh. It was a really fun visit. Yeah. And we went to a Pirates game, and at that stadium, it's beautifully kind of integrated into the downtown. You almost kind of don't fully catch it as you're coming up to it, because it's like really in this dense area, and you sort of seamlessly enter it from, the street that's filled with bars and restaurants and places to celebrate. And I'm sure you can even like hear the crowd when there's, an exciting event, like when you're outside. It's just very, very woven in a cool and beautiful way. And I love stadiums like that. But it's like nothing could be more opposite from that than Dodger Stadium, where it's like in this sort of strange, it's almost like like it came from outer space and it was like plopped down on this like heliopad, where it's just it's a huge pain, getting there and getting out, and there's stuff in the stadium, but there's really, you want to go and celebrate after, and it's like it's almost like you got to hold on to the excitement to like be able to even get somewhere to do that. And like, and where's my car? And just to me, like the way that it kind of makes no sense, and I think from a traditional person would say like this is terrible in a lot of ways. That's what makes it interesting in LA. And I've come to love that whole kind of experience around it, and like this whole bubble you're in. And I also think Dodger Stadium's in such an interesting intersection, of that like Chinatown, Highland Park, Echo Park. It's like kind of got so many different, kind of neighborhoods feeding into it. And I think that also is just fascinating and interesting and makes it really cool and edgy. And I don't feel like that in even those beautifully integrated, sports stadiums in other cities. So yeah. And then just, of course, the atmosphere there, we're such like a, diehard city for baseball, and the way the fans are, and, the food's not great. The drinking's not that great, but like, you just gotta love it. It's such a fun experience. And it's so beautiful so much of the year that you can really just be in like an outdoor venue like that and kind of just be, chilling in paradise.
Yeah. Yeah. The interesting thing about it being so isolated too, is that after a game, you get these crowds of people going through the residential neighborhoods around.
Yes.
You, right?
Yes.
So it's like, you can even, maybe you weren't even at the game, but you're driving home from somewhere else, and suddenly there are just packs of really, well, happy or sad, depending on the outcome.
Yeah. Or already drunk people. Yeah.
But it's very interesting.
Yes.
To have these crowds in residential streets.
Totally. I know. That's a really good point. And I think the role Dodger Stadium played also in COVID, and being this testing center and now vaccination sites where my parents got vaccinated, that was very surreal to also, see a place that serves that very specific purpose of, celebrating or being bummed about it's sports. You're kind of like, it's that element of our society that feels purely just about that spectacle and enjoying oneself. And then suddenly to have gone a bunch of times, in this very strange moment of the world lockdown, but to see it, really serve an incredible purpose in keeping our city safe and healthy, that was really, really amazing too. Yeah,
absolutely. I wonder if it's unprecedented in the history of the stadium.
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah. I don't know. Maybe what would be the other kind of polio, or probably, I don't know if the history lines up there, but yeah, it's probably not been, which is really interesting. Yeah.
It's a crazy time in history.
Yeah. Oh. It was interesting too. Like, I feel like the kind of the way that we're, the media kind of has trained us to think about what a year like COVID, like 2020 would be like. You think it's going to be, you would think you'd go to a site like Dodger Stadium and people would be jumping out of their cars and, grabbing tests or vaccines and fighting with each other. And, we're like in zombie apocalypse. And it was nice to see how kind of peaceful everything felt, given that it's like this wild time. I mean, not saying that by any means, it was perfect, but it was good to see like, when it really comes down to it, we really do try to figure this out together and be as harmonious as possible. But at least that's my optimistic view.
I'm with you on that. I mean, I really feel that in these times, humans do seem to come together and take care of each other. I mean, I don't know what'll happen if there actually is a zombie apocalypse. That might be different, but in my experience, the sort of crises that we've been through as a society and as a community, people do tend to come together. I know we're living, I don't want to sound naive. I know we're living in a very polarized time too.
No, of course.
But, it's just the certain interactions or experiences I've been lucky to have since the start of the pandemic. I just feel like people are trying to help each other.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think, like, when's the last time, the whole world went through this together. Like, nobody was safe and kind of, able to not have some kind of interaction or some part of themselves, have that fear or have a tragedy or be connected to one. The entire world, no one was literally immune to it. And I can't think, you think of like the world wars. It's like a lot of the world, of course, was part of that, but there are parts that were immune to that, or were sort of just, not, that wasn't that place's experience at that time in history. So it's like the whole world went through something. It's hard to not think that there's that can't bring us together on some level, or at least make us sort of rethink, how we interact, or just question things or change us. And so I think we all just are hoping that, it's the best things that come from that.
Absolutely. And then of course, with the wars, people were on opposite sides of that. Whereas here,
right.
It's
we're
on
the same side. Yeah.
We're on the same side.
Yeah. It's definitely something to live through. And so for my final destination, actually not far from Dodger Stadium, I chose the old kind of that cornfield sort of, and the immediate vicinity around it, which is really just, you have an interesting view actually of Dodger Stadium directly south from there. And I remember when this kind of piece of land was really a hot topic, there was all these like architecture competitions around it.
Yes.
We did a studio about it at UCLA in grad school. And I remember I did this whole, like, it was like a cornucopia of like feasting and growing food. And, of course I was like, try to take everything in the direction of food as much as possible. But again, such an interesting intersection of the way that space comes together. It feels, very, very LA, and very kind of still not fully determined. In all the times I've been back since I really studied it in school, it's like, it still feels kind of like a question mark to me, where it could stay how it is, or it could change a lot, or be developed a lot, or it's just, I think, a really, in that way, very, very LA. And I love Highland Park Brewery, which is kind of, right, just like butts up against it. It's one of my favorite breweries in the city, and a fun area to sort of take in that intersection. I love that part of Chinatown that's kind of also right adjacent to there. And yeah, it's the views, it's all just this very kind of cool LA moment. So that's my final spot.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. I'm wondering too, because you grew up in LA, were these places, some of them, I think, like the Birria stand, you obviously, and maybe the Bluffs Park, you kind of came to later in life, but
yeah,
any of these, do you have memories of them from childhood even?
Oh yeah, Dodger Stadium, of course, going to games, always going with my glove and being shocked that I didn't catch a ball. Like how could that not have happened? And then, I'm sure we did go to that Bluffs Park, but I don't have a concrete memory of it. That felt like more of a rediscovery as an adult. And again, a little bit kind of taking the beach for granted, as an Angelino, as we often do. And then, yeah, definitely not Musso and Frank's. Yeah, more of them are adult life, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's funny.
That's interesting.
Yeah. Of course, that cornfield park, or the not a cornfield, that it's like, I don't even know. It felt like we were all kind of unaware of that for many years, and then it was just sort of this unearthed idea. So, yeah. Much more recent.
I remember at the time when it was kind of a hot topic in architecture, somebody
Yeah.
getting married there, I think.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think there's a good amount of that actually.
Quite possibly.
Yeah. I've definitely seen in the times I've been little like weddings or ceremonies. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you could ask anyone about their 5 places in LA, who would you choose to ask?
Yeah. This was a really good question. And can I, not to ask a question, in response to the question,
That's fine.
but is there anything, because there's a lot of people I think that would be, I thought about like my dad, for example.
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe I will, but I don't know if is there a perspective that you're looking for in terms of, that you've had more of one kind of perspective, and it would be ideal to hear from, someone from another community or anything like that? Or is it really just anyone is exciting?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. I mean, the goal is to get a really diverse, a broad range of experiences of LA.
Yeah.
So in itself, just the whole concept of the +1, in itself, that's bringing in, a broader range of people than I could possibly have access to. So, I mean, I would say anyone that you are interested in interviewing, and even if there's more than one person, that's great too. Ideally, you would do the interview because I think that brings a real richness to it, but I also understand that you're super busy.
So. Yeah, no, I'm totally happy to do it. I think that sounds actually really, really fun. Maybe on that point, I could do my dad and he's an architect as well. And I definitely think he would be really fun to talk to about this. And he has so many, first of all, it's interesting how similar a lot of the things he would do when he was younger. Like he and his like pals would always go to Jitlada. He'd say, I was like, oh, it's like hipsters have been going there for, since the 70s. And he talks about a lot of like riding Mulholland all the way to the water on his bike. And he has a lot of cool stories about just experiencing the landscape like that. But I'd love to do it with my dad. And I was thinking maybe my mother-in-law, Freya's mom, who came from the Philippines and has done, I mean, she's so involved in like environmental work in the city and nationally with Sierra Club. And she might have some really just cool kind of insight on the ecology and how that connects to the defining places.
Very cool.
Yeah. And I'm like, major, you're like, oh, you're really, getting those brownie points with the parents here. Interviewing one from each side. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that sounds wonderful. I mean, I think I created this podcast because I'm so curious to hear about people's experiences. And I mean, there's no limit to the number of people we ask.
Yeah, that's so awesome. Because someone else that I was just thinking about was our friends who own Common Space Brewery. And they've done such a good job with, beer is so interesting to me because of the time frame being relatively fast compared to spirits. And you can sort of produce it at this lower volume and it's so versatile. And they've done so many different kind of, partnership beers. We've done a few with them. We're going to do one around Pride, but they've done so many like with the community and with various communities and supporting restaurants coming back. And they're just so thoughtful in their approach. And, but I feel like they would be really fun to talk to about this. So if it's okay with you, I'd love to also interview one of them. It's such a cool idea. My mom did a book called Truman's LA Adventure. And it's really cool. It's about like our old dog that basically he runs away and he runs to all these different LA landmarks, Watts Towers, Dodger Stadium, the downtown library, and just such a fun way for, young kids and the parents reading them the book to learn about these, different, very, very LA places. And yeah, I should get you a copy. It's a really cool. She illustrated and wrote it. So
that's wonderful.
Yeah.
How long ago did she do that?
This was maybe, I want to say 5 years ago.
Amazing. I would love to see it.
Yeah, I'll show it to you. She does multiple Cool House shout outs. Of course, Truman runs to our ice cream truck, which is in front of the Disney concert hall. Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah. And to the shop. I was like, can't beat the mom PR,
That's excellent.
That was so fun.
It was so fun. I've really enjoyed learning about your experience of LA and the places that define the city for you.
Yeah.
I was expecting a few more food places, but I love your choices.
Right. I only went 3 out of 5. That's
right.
Keeping it very conservative for me. But I do want to go eat the food of everywhere I mentioned also. Now I'm so hungry.
To learn more about Natasha Case and find links to all the places referenced in our conversation, as well as an article by DJ Waldy on the history of the term Angelino, please check out the show notes. To hear more stories of the places that define Los Angeles, please subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. You can also visit us online at 5places.la. 5 Places is produced by Annalie Garicani, Quinn Wynn, and me, Emmanuelle Bourlier, for the LA Forum for Architecture and Urban Design. We recorded on Chumash, Keech, Tongva, and Mi'kanakan land. Thank you for listening.